Hello, this is Christina Wallace and welcome to my channel. I've made little changes to my introduction, so I thought I'd come in and say hello anyway. So this video is, as you can see, I have some cutters here, but I've ended up using just freeform to make this pansy petals. So for those of you who are interested in making petals and other parts of flower without cutters, this is a little bonus here. However, the main stress of this tutorial is actually to try and paint cold porcelain petals with oil paints and kind of add texture to it the way you would with dust if using sugar. It's my first time trying it and I'm very excited. So yeah, let's get to it. So many of you are already free-forming your flowers because obviously there are practical bonuses to it, such as not needing to have any cutters, as I said. So I'm just, for those who haven't come across, if any, this way of making flowers. So basically you portion your paste in little balls, or however you want to, in the same portions, the same sizes, for the same sizes of petals. So then when you roll them out in the same way, using the same pressure and reaching the same thickness, then they're all going to be more or less the same shape. It gives them a little bit of a, you could be argued that free forming gives them a little bit of a natural kind of flow, a natural shape. So this is what I'm doing here. So I've just rolled them out, and yes, they did come out very similar shape. And here I'm using water and just it's called porcelain, as I mentioned, but I'm pretty much using sugar techniques here. So I've wired it because then it'd be easy to assemble it later. Although with cold porcelain you can often get away without wiring, just like you saw in my last tutorial where I was meant to wire it, but then I've dried the middle too much, so I couldn't even stick the wire in. Anyway, so here I'm just using Rose's veinner, because when you freeform you still need veiners, very much so, for best results. Generally, I don't like freeform for most flowers because I think it gives you less control, or so is my experience anyway, and I find that some petals simply require more definite shape. But there are some amazing flower artists who freeform really successfully, so they would beg to differ. So here basically what I do, I rolled out, I freeformed the petal, and then I defined it further with an adapted cutter, and then I thinned the petal again with my rolling pin. And so, as you would be able to see in a minute, the result actually is almost the same. That doesn't necessarily happen to different flowers. So, for example, freeforming pom-pom dahlia, in my opinion, it wouldn't work as well. But anyway, for what it's worth, this is the idea of freeform. If you want to see more examples of freeform flowers, by all means give me a shout and I will try to make a video on it sooner than later. So here you see at the bottom is freeform petals, and at the top are the ones where I used cutters. They're practically the same, and I'm just going to guess the shape of pansy. This is my first time making pansy, so I'm not going to actually concentrate on giving it a beautiful shape. I'm just going to get the structure roughly right, and then I'm going to move on to the very exciting bit where I'm actually going to use a series called Porcelain and Clay Equipment, i.e. oil paints, not just tint my paste like I would with edible paints anyway, but to actually paint over my petals. They are either they're not 100% dry, they are kind of mostly dry, and they're absolutely perfect to paint. So I'm afraid for sugar artists there is no equivalent of doing this for sugar, or at least I haven't tried it, and after I know that by the time I've finished this video I would be really tempted to try something similar in sugar, but actually it's not to try it at home as we stand. So I'm going to concentrate on painting, and I am not at this point I'm not really particularly comfortable with it, so I'm trying different techniques, and I don't think they look amazing. They look okay, and you know, very typically I try to do some painting with very thin with very thin brush, and it works very nicely on a spare petal. But when as you'll be able to see later, when I try to do a proper petal, this one, it just doesn't work as well, typical. But generally I think that I would need to do some exercises to draw more confidently and to draw right shape on flower petals. It's definitely going to be one of those things I'm definitely going to try and do. As to the tutorial part of this painting over petals, it's not much of a tutorial because I've not actually I've got zero of experience doing it. So what I've done here, I've tried layering my paints like I normally would do with dust for sugar, and I'm more or less happy with the background of it. And then so layering happens with kind of a wet paint, and cold porcelain absolutely fine with all the water, or I don't actually mix it with water. You could mix it with water, but I mix it with that solution that I showed you earlier. So and this over the top I go with dry or nearly dry paint, kind of darker, and it seemed to work quite well. I mean, I'm trying to remember to link up a video by Alex Ashby, who is very good at conditioning cold porcelain, I think. So yeah, I've kind of picked up some tips from her, or generally looking around the internet. Now here I've started using wet wipe because I was thinking, well, why the hell not to just blend it a little bit? And I've not seen anyone else use a wet wipe, so I don't know if it's a done thing, but since it's not an edible medium and I am trying to make best of it, absolute and utter best of it, I'm kind of trying to be critical and not do things because other people don't do it. So yeah, wet wipe was my favorite tool in this whole procedure, as you would be able to see in a minute. So this is the back of the petal for my pansy. I'm not too bothered about being particularly right about the back of it. I have no idea. Anyone knows what's going on in the back of pansy? Is it white or what's going on? So this effect I really like, the one on the right, so I just passed it, and I am going to try to show you how I've achieved it. And basically it's very simple. I just dilute my color with this liquid, this kind of arty variety of white spirit or whatever it is, and then yeah, and I just layer it and try to get some kind of a texture without it looking too artificial, because the original result just before this, I did like it. It was okay, but it was a little bit too artificial looking for my liking. So this is I quite like this, so I just keep layering it, and I'm thinking, is that cold porcelain going to bear up to it, or is it going to fall apart? But it bears up to it really well, and you could just kind of layer it and wipe it, layer it and wipe it, and it seemed to be working. Finally it's starting to get this nice, quite nice natural looking veins, and it's just a rose vein. I mean, I'm sure they have Pansy dedicated veiners, and if you have those, I'm sure you can get nicer results. But the whole idea here is to really, for me to have a look, and for you, if you want to join me on this one, and I'd love you to join me on this one, on this little exercise with paints and cold porcelain. So yeah, just to try it out, and I do quite like this result. You know, if you're new to my channel, by the way, I am doing this kind of experiments all the time. I do called porcelain, clay, sugar, and if it's not a tutorial, it's some kind of an experiment on technique. So this is the original one, the new one. I do prefer the one on the right. So now I kind of warmed up and got a bit of a hang of it, and yeah, and I'm just kind of aiming for a natural looking petals, maybe not necessarily botanically correct ones, but natural looking petals. So yeah, if you're new and if you like making flowers, to my knowledge, I am the only channel out there that's dedicated to making flowers only. I mean, I've started off as a cake decorating corner shop, doing a bit of everything, but for ages and ages and ages now I've just been doing flowers. So subscribe and join me on my journey of exploring handmade flowers out of cold porcelain clay and sugar. By the way, sugar artists out there, give me a shout if you're sick and tired of me doing cold porcelain and clay and I do something in sugar on my next tutorial. So yeah, here I'm back to my old tricks, trying to give it more accent. I seem to be unable to keep anything very gentle, very light, and very undramatic. I guess it's just my temperament and it always catches up with me. So this is where I got, and I kind of, once the camera was off, I kept playing with it and I got some other interesting results this is this one. I know you'll probably see one at the end when I'm finishing off the flowers. That interesting thing where I just wetted the petals and then let the darker dye just run into the veins. But yeah, if you like that particular one, I might do a tutorial on that in particular later. This is just a general kind of a tutorial on Pansy with her first try, a first touch on this whole using paints. And I've started off being very uncomfortable about it, but by the end of making this, I've actually started to really get into it. So yeah, another thing, there was this guy in a woolly hat, and on his avatar anyway, one of my followers, or maybe like a one-off a drop-in guest, he asked me where my accent was from, and actually it never cropped up as one of my common questions I get asked when I was doing my Q&A, but I think people just being polite and don't want to upset me. But hey, my accent is Ukrainian, I'm Ukrainian, and I used to get asked that all the time in the 90s when I started living in the UK, but I think since then, since the 1990s, it's become kind of a bad manners to ask people where they were from. I really have no issues with being asked that. So I'm Ukrainian and I'm from Kiev, and so my accent is Ukrainian. So then this pansy is I'm hoping I'm kind of assembling it correctly. Again, I've googled the picture, and I think that the whole shaping of it could be done a lot better. But for what it's worth, I think as all around this pansy worked out, and now I just have to finish it nicely. Just a little stem. I do like the way porcelain gives it a little stem of everything. So yeah, you guys who always come to watch my videos and really participate and leave me nice comments at the end, you are so lovely, and I am so grateful that you come and watch my channel, because I love you and I love my channel, and I do like running YouTube, and obviously we work as a team. So you have a lovely Christmas. I know I've mentioned it before and I wasn't sure whether I was going to do another video, but here I am. So this is the last one, and I'm going to take a week off at Christmas, and then I'm going to go and make some more videos. I think the next one is going to be discussing different clays for those who want to really look into using clay as well as sugar, or just by itself for home decor. Thank you for subscribing and watching, and see you again after the holidays.